When we look at LA, there was a riot in the streets. All of these cities have black mayors. Yeah. So we have to begin to understand that moving black people up the economic ladder does not necessarily mean that black people on the bottom of the economic ladder are going to be empowered, because there are black people who identify with the system so much that they are self-hating Negroes.
Mr. Bin Wahad, you seem to be going kaboom to the entire white community. Do we have from you a spirit of belief that there really are out there in America white folks who do not suffer from the pathology that Sister Souljah reminds us does exist in this country?
But why is that the question? In other words, it's the same as when you're dealing with the issue in South Africa. People say, well, if black people get in control of that government, what will they do with the white people who are living there? Why is that the question? Can we refocus the question
I'd like to explain
as to how we're going to correct?
Let me have a moment to defend my question. Okay. If you believe that all people who are white are interested in pillaging, reminding us, as you painfully do, of our own history.
No, that's a mischaracterization. That's a mischaracterization, and first of all, it's the mischaracterization because the Constitution was established by white males with property. It said all men are created equal, right, and they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. It didn't say women were created equal with men, and the Bill of Rights was attached to the Constitution because people without property had no rights. So I did not say that all white people are interested in burning and looting and pillaging. I am saying that the ideals that established this country were based on burning, looting, and pillaging people's land.
Accept your point, and you concede to us that in contemporary society, we do have honorable people of all colors who have as much of an interest in the salvation of their babies as...
But the problem with that, Phil, is that the people of good intentions in the white community are the minority. They do not stand on principle, and they do not struggle against their own racism and white skin privilege. See, the problem is this. It's like men who say, I understand how you feel as a woman being subjected to sexist behavior.
They can't possibly.
Not without interacting with women and empowering them.
Bill, the problem, though, I think with this whole analysis, as I see it, we're talking, and I have great respect for the Constitution, but let's be frank, it was not based upon an idealistic view of human beings. Dhoruba doesn't realize that I think that what he's saying is a description of not white people, but all people, was in fact the foundation of America's political philosophy. People are greedy. Give them a chance, they'll beat you up. Give them a chance, they'll kill you, rape you, rob you. That was exactly, if I may say so, the view of human beings, not just white human beings, but most human beings.
Have we moved somewhat off this animalistic, primitive?
The point is, however, that the point that I think I hear, at least, what Sister Souljah says and others say, has less to do, we talk about all this economic redistribution and so forth. Let's talk about the basic issue of politics. The basic issue of politics is power. If you have power over me, you're going to abuse it. If I have no power to resist you, then I'm going to be abused. And I don't care what's in your heart. I don't want to know what's in your heart half the time. I want to know whether there's a weapon in your hand and whether I have the means to defend myself against it. Could be economic, could be social, could be political, could be physical, but I've got to be able to defend myself because I can't trust you. And that's an American statement.
That is
not a statement of some idealism.
There is no human soul to be found anywhere?
That's not the point. The point is that if you give people power over you and you can't defend yourself against them, our founders said they will abuse you, and the world, if I don't mind saying so, from a black person's point of view, I don't have to prove to you that somebody's out to get me. There are 400 years of history in this country that people are out to get me, and they got me more than half the time. I don't have to prove that to anybody.
Jonathan Kozol, whose seminal book, Death at an Early Age, was a personal account of his own experience of teaching 4th grade in the community of Roxbury, the minority community within the city of Boston. Mr. Kozol, you've been patient, sir. What are your thoughts as you listen in on our dialogue?
Well, I didn't think I'd ever agree with Alan Keyes on anything, but I sure agree with what he just said. I started teaching, as you know, in a segregated school in the mid-'60s. Today, inner city schools everywhere are more segregated and less equal than they were at the time I set out as a teacher. Inner city kids I see all over the country are in squalid, ugly, filthy, overcrowded buildings in which not one of us would willingly spend 1 hour. Their lives are more miserable today than they were when I began. By any kind of statistics, I won't drown you in statistics, but there's one which is so devastating, I have to cite it here. As you know, Phil, tracking has come back into schools again. It's become a sort of fashionable way of segregating kids within a single school. Black children, statistically, are 3 times as likely to be tracked into so-called special classes for the retarded as white children, but only half as likely to be put into gifted programs. That is an intolerable statistic in a democracy. And anybody who looks at that and all the other statistics, the fact that black infant mortality is twice that of white children, anyone who looks at those kinds of statistics, or a recent news event, black Haitians being brutally excluded from this country while white Europeans are welcomed at New York International Airport. Anyone who looks at that knows in their heart that racism remains the central moral agony of this society.
Yeah. So my pleading to Mr. Bin Wahad and to Dr. Keyes in the white liberal tradition of, gee, you don't totally dislike us, do you, is a rather empty
I'll
kind
tell
of...
you why I think it is, Phil, because, not to criticize you, naturally I'd like to feel, you know, I'm a nice guy, I hope black people will like me, but that's wasted energy. The issue isn't whether they like you and me or not. The issue is whether they have an even shot in this society, and they can't afford to worry about our injured feelings.
Yes,
And
I
they
ask for
shouldn't
only
waste
one
time.
moment to defend the question. If the anger is that overwhelming, and the evidence supported by your scholarship makes clear their positions, then we have to wonder whether we should even waste any more energy with this ideal of integration and living together and cooperating. I ask you not because I'm an insecure person who wants to be loved. I have children who must live in the society.
Dr. Edwards is the one who spoke eloquently to the point, and that is America herself. America herself will not survive in the 21st century unless she comes to tap into the diversity that is hers and stop pursuing this kind of divisive policy. This is more of a threat to the future of America than anything ever posed by the old USSR. We will explode from within unless we all understand we have a stake in this system. And that's the compelling issue, not whether we like each other, not whether we love each other, not whether it ever started out right, not whether we should be angry with anybody. We won't survive unless we understand we're in it together.
Appreciate very much your comments, Mayor Kelly, and I promise I shall not for the rest of the program ask any member of this audience or panel whether they like me. Please welcome Anna Deavere Smith is the performing artist who is responsible for a much discussed, much heralded one-woman show titled Fires in the Mirror. You wanted to say, Miss Smith.
Well, I wanted to say something about the fact of who's together here in this issue of race. And it's kind of startling to me that we are looking at the issue of race still in black and white, especially since we watched these fires of Los Angeles burn, and it's clear that the story is much more complex than black and white. There are Latinos involved in the story. There are Asian Americans who were taking matters to themselves and standing on roofs with their own guns. So that the dialogue that we had before we decide whether we like white people or not, I think we have to begin to develop strategies and techniques for negotiating our differences over a very broad canvas. And this is going to mean the life and death of many of us. I've worked in the New York City public schools and seen the speed and dispatch with which a naughty boy quickly becomes a retarded boy. It's simply a matter of taking him out of the class on the wrong day and putting him in another class.
What we're talking about here is very clear. If you look at Latin America today, in every society in Latin America. And Latin America is essentially a conglomeration of European settler states. The conquistadores went in there and did the same thing that the English did here and everything, right? When we look at the compositions of these societies, we see that at the top are light-skinned descendants of conquistadores, and at the bottom are native people and black descendants of Africans. White skin privilege is a European ideal and concept that was exported with their economic system, their religious philosophy, and it was exported and imposed on people of color. So when we talk about Latinos, let's understand what we're saying here. We're talking about Latinos who, for the most part, have African blood in them, and they have internalized racism just like everybody else. When we look at Asian Americans, many of the Asians